Hanoka was just another ordinary high school student. He had already accepted that he would never have a girlfriend. After all, he wasn't cool, rich, or even smart. But one fine day, his life was completely turned upside down. And no, it wasn't because of an isekai truck that appeared out of nowhere, but because of the hottest girl in school. Turns out that knowing the school principal can give you more than just a spot. Apparently, it can also give you a crush on his daughter, Ayaka. The only special connection between Hanoka and Ayaka was that they took the same school bus and sat next to each other in class. But even with all that proximity, they never exchanged a single word. They seemed to live in completely different universes. While Ayaka was surrounded by a legion of fans like pigeons around a piece of bread, Hanoka went unnoticed like a background extra with no lines. One day he accidentally dropped his eraser on the floor, and who picked it up for him was none other than Ayaka. That was it. For her fan club, that was the end of the world. They dragged Hanoka out of the classroom, threw him on the ground, and beat him up like he was some generic NPC from an anime, even saying, "Never make the princess bend down for you again." After taking a respectful beating, he went to the teacher's office to help with papers, since it was his shift that day. In the middle of that, a girl approached and snatched the papers from his hands. You could almost think, oh, here's the beginning of a little school romance. But no, she was just another one of Ayaka's attendants, there to make sure Hanoka stayed far away from the school goddess, since Ayaka was also on duty that day. In the end, Hanoka's school days were always like that. He was a background character in Ayaka's story, a forgotten side character, an anime extra who didn't even get a name. One day after class, he went to throw out the trash and started reflecting about his own existence. That's when, in the middle of this existential moment, he saw a rabbit toy with an obviously demonic face thrown in the garbage. Curious, he picked it up and read a bizarre message written on its belly. The weather will be clear today, but some school buildings may collapse. He figured that could only be some fourth grader's prank. But then, a huge shadow appeared on the ground. He looked up, and yes, it was exactly what you're thinking. The school's clock tower was collapsing right on top of him. The building came crashing down on him. End of story. Or at least that's what he thought. But then he opened his eyes and found himself in her arms. Ayaka, that's right. And the craziest part? She was wearing a witch's outfit that looked more like an anime convention cosplay. Hanoka started freaking out, obviously, but she just said, "Don't move or you'll fall." Still not understanding anything, he looked around and discovered they were floating in midair on top of a broom. Far away, a girl with cat ears watched the scene and wondered if Ayaka was a workshop witch. Then she snapped her fingers and summoned two giant armored stuffed rabbits to attack them. Ayaka, calm as ever, tossed Hanoka into the air, dodged the attack with an acrobatic leap, and incinerated the rabbits with a burst of fire before landing gracefully and catching Hanoka again. Exactly like a fairy tale rescue, only reversed. The rabbits got up again and charged at them. Ayaka fired more fireballs and fought directly with her broom and spells. She shouted for Hanoka to stay close to her. But of course, he did the exact opposite. He turned and saw the cat-eared girl waving at him from behind a building, telling him it was safe there. In his innocence, he thought she must be Ayaka's friend and ran over. But as soon as he arrived, he was surrounded by an entire troop of toy soldiers who grabbed his arms and forced him to kneel. One of them, wielding an axe, came close, ready to make Hanoka the successor to nearly headless Nick in Harry Potter. Hanoka was still trying to figure out if this was all a dream when Ayaka appeared again, burned everyone to ashes, and saved the day once more. Still thinking he was asleep, Hanoka decided to confess in the most ridiculous way possible. He told her she was beautiful, even in his dreams, and that in real life she would never care about him, much less save his life. She, like a true mix of Sailor Moon and Harry Potter, replied that it was her mission to protect him. He asked why, and she said, "Because you are my princess." Hanoka glitched. "Wait, what? I'm a princess?" And Ayaka replied, "Our anime doesn't take place in 2023. Here there are still only two genders, okay?" She then told him to just let her take care of everything. But Hanoka noticed that part of her hair was scorched and felt guilty. He asked why she hurt herself because of him, even after telling him to stay close. He said it was all his fault, that her burned hair was like a divine punishment for his stupidity, but soon realized that deep down he was starting to feel something for her. And maybe it wasn't just admiration. After so much time being beaten up by her fanboys, now he himself was becoming one. While drowning in his own thoughts, he saw one of the soldiers standing up behind her, ready to strike, and decided he was going to save her too. He threw himself in front, took the hit for her, and thought he would have an epic moment saying, "My body moved on its own." But he didn't even have time. He passed out before he could get the words out. Ayaka approached and hugged him gently. And yes, gently. The kind of hug that carries a different kind of energy, you know? Seeing him hurt, Ayaka got truly angry. She said she should have turned them all to ash from the start. Then she stood, invoked her ultimate spell, Million Clover, and simply incinerated everyone with a monstrous fire explosion. Later that same day, Honoka woke up in Ayaka's private room inside the school. She looked at him and firmly said, "It wasn't a dream, and someday I'll explain everything to you." For now, Ayaka said they should just go home, and so the two walked together. On the way, she explained that, for now, all Honoka needed to know was that protecting him was her mission, because he was her master. He didn't understand a thing about that master talk, but decided to just walk silently by her side. And so they continued, without exchanging another word in that moment. A few days passed and everything seemed to have returned to normal. But this time, instead of just being the invisible extra at school, Honoka began attracting envy, sideways glances, and free hatred. All because early in the morning, Ayaka decided to sit next to him on the bus. After that, the two even walked together to class, which only intensified the attention. Honoka felt that if he stayed near her for 5 more seconds, he would be lynched. So he made up a stomachache and ran out of the classroom, but fate was already waiting. He was surrounded by school bullies who grabbed him by the collar and told him to know his place. Already preparing for another beatdown, Honoka was saved by Ayaka's arrival. She appeared out of nowhere, glared at the guys, and ordered them to let him go. With a quick move, she pulled Honoka's uniform into a headlock and warned, "Anyone who lays a finger on him again will end up roasted." At lunchtime, Ayaka sat next to Honoka along with some girls from her fan club. The surprise? She fed him with her own hands and even said she had prepared the food herself. Honoka didn't know how to feel, happy with her affection, but totally uncomfortable with the judgmental looks of the 20 girls around him. Feeling like an intruder, he stood up and said he would eat alone so as not to get in the way, then ran off. Ayaka, hearing that, grew furious and, in a silent rage, set fire to everyone's lunch without blinking. Meanwhile, Honoka walked alone through the schoolyard, exactly where the building had collapsed on him days earlier. He noticed how everything looked intact, as if nothing had happened. Then he felt a presence behind him. The cat-eared girl. She appeared out of nowhere and revealed that the whole collapsing building incident was just an illusion. Then she looked at him with disdain and said that now she was certain he really was a powerless idiot, since he had gotten this far without noticing anything. As she walked toward him, her body began to transform with a magical aura, witch clothes, pointy hat, and all. She introduced herself as Tanpopo, one of the tower witches, and warned that she was there to kidnap his stupid self. Before Honoka could react, Ayaka suddenly appeared, grabbed him in her arms, and pulled him away. Tanpopo, as if already expecting Ayaka's appearance, summoned her army of toy soldiers to attack. But this time, it wasn't just a half-dozen little soldiers, it was a true massacre of murderous plushies. Ayaka was pierced by spears and swords from every side. When Honoka woke up after the attack, he was on the ground and saw Ayaka all wounded, covering his body with her own. She asked if he was okay, even though she was more full of holes than Swiss cheese. He couldn't understand how she was still alive. Feeling weak, useless, he told her he believed in her, but that at the moment, the best he could do was call an ambulance. Ayaka, with a serene smile, replied that if he really wanted to repay her, then he had to promise that at the next lunch he wouldn't run away. Honoka promised. Still in shock, he said she was bleeding a lot, but Ayaka smiled and said, "I'm made of fire, I'm fine." She then asked him to close his eyes and stay still. Then she channeled her magic, sent all the soldiers flying, and turned them into ashes with a single devastating spell. After that, she walked with Honoka in her arms, as if he were a rescued princess. Facing Tanpopo, Ayaka warned she was going to fry the big-eared girl without mercy and launched a fire blast straight at her. Tanpopo even tried to defend herself by summoning more soldiers, but barely managed to escape with her tail literally on fire. After that, Ayaka tells Honoka to open his eyes. When he looks around, everything is perfectly clean, with no sign of destruction. And so, they head back home, ending yet another completely insane day. The next morning, 5 new students appear at school, and guess who? It's her, Tanpopo, along with her fellow tower witches. A few days pass, and Honoka keeps pressing Ayaka to finally explain what's going on. What's this witch business? Why is he being targeted? One day, he decides he'll insist until he gets an answer from her, but soon notices she didn't even take the bus with him that morning. Arriving at school, he changes his shoes at the entrance, walks toward the classroom, but then notices something strange. Ayaka is inside, but not alone. She's having fun with the new students. One detail catches his attention. He didn't walk into his own classroom. He's actually inside the Torture Society Club. Instead of asking why such a club even exists at school, he asks how he ended up there. Ayaka explains that she cast a spell on him, making him unknowingly walk there instead of to his classroom. She wanted a casual meeting. Ayaka then turns to the tied-up girls and declares this is a witch hunt. She wanted to get rid of them because they could pose a threat to Honoka. He isn't sure if he believes that. He looks at the desperate girls and says, "At least take off their gags so they can talk, come on." And Ayaka obeys without hesitation. She reveals she wanted to finish everything quickly, but one of the witches escaped, so she used the others as bait to lure the missing one. Honoka walks up to Tanpopo and asks why they're after him. She says it's honestly no surprise that Miss Goody Two-Shoes Ayaka hasn't told him anything, and explains she wants his body. She wants the white stuff inside him. Honoka's face burns with embarrassment, not sure if he heard that right. Ayaka quickly cuts in with, "Stop believing everything your enemies say, you fool." Tanpopo then asks if they really think everything is resolved, because they still need to capture the last member of the group. At that moment, a black gooey liquid starts dripping from the ceiling until it swallows both of them completely. From within, the dark slime emerges May, who frees her friends and then kidnaps Honoka, dragging him through the floor into the room below, leaving the other witches to face Ayaka. May starts celebrating her escape with her prize, but forgets one important detail. She's not the main villain of this story. That's when the floor explodes with a powerful magic. From above, Ayaka looks down at the 4 defeated witches on the ground. She then calmly descends and begins walking toward May, but the Shadow Witch orders her to stop, threatening that if she takes one more step, she'll have her pet wolf bite Honoka's neck. And seriously, what do these witches have against his neck? Ayaka doesn't even flinch. She tells him not to worry because she'll fry that lunatic in a second, and keeps walking firmly. May, in response, stands up holding Honoka hostage and makes the wolf actually bite his neck. But instead of panicking, Ayaka simply sets everything on fire, delivers a powerful kick to her enemy, and frees Honoka. Surprisingly, Honoka's neck is intact. The one who actually took the bite was Ayaka, and only afterward does he realize she switched places with him at the last second. May takes advantage of the opening and flees with her allies, leaving everything behind. Later that same afternoon, Honoka wakes up in Ayaka's room inside the school. Next to him, she's wearing a scarf. In the middle of summer, he realizes she's hiding the wound. She apologizes and confesses that she wanted him to live a peaceful, normal life. But if things keep going like this, the Tower Witches will continue to hunt him. So, the only option now is to fight back, to defeat the mind behind all of this. The problem? She has no idea who it is. Honoka listens to everything and feels guilty that she got hurt because of him. He looks at her seriously and says he wants to know everything. And more, he asks to become her apprentice. He doesn't want her to face everything alone anymore. Meanwhile, somewhere inside a fancy cafe, the school principal and Ayaka's mother, Kazane, meets with an old rival, the villain, Cronoir. After just 130 years without seeing each other, Cronoir says she discovered some Medusa students have been picking fights with Kazane's protégés, and that she might want to join in the fun. That weekend, Ayaka calls Honoka and asks him to meet her outside school. He thinks it might be a date, but in reality, she just wants to keep her promise, to tell him the truth about the witches and everything that's going on. She says they're going to school, but first they'll stop at a diner. On the way, Ayaka begins to tell the story of the magical world. She explains there are 2 types of witches: workshop witches and tower witches. The workshop witches are the ones who protect the world. They build workshops in places where people gather, such as towns and villages. Their role is to prevent magic from being used for evil. They live in these places, and that's why they're called that. The tower witches are the opposite. Selfish. They don't follow any rules, use their powers only for their own benefit, and don't care if that harms other people. Ayaka then says that if he's captured by them, the world could literally end. After that, they enter the diner and take a break. When the food is served, a waitress shows up speaking in a voice way too high-pitched to Ayaka. She stares at the girl with a sour expression, but listens to everything she says. The waitress, whom Honoka recognizes as the school's student council vice president, warns that Cronoir is in town and that more tower witches are coming as well. Oh, and detail, the vice is also a workshop witch, just like Ayaka. After Ayaka finishes her soda, the 2 leave the place and stop by a shopping mall to buy clothes. While she tries on some outfits, Honoka sees a cute girl helping a lost child. He approaches, impressed, but then the girl looks at him, opens a little notebook with notes, and confirms he's the same guy from the photos. Suddenly, she kicks the child. Yes, without mercy, like it was some useless NPC, and pulls out a sword. Without warning, she leaps at Honoka. She's a tower witch. In seconds, her friends appear from behind and attack Ayaka. One of them even starts shooting with a pistol, American-style jutsu gunner. Ayaka, with cold blood, uses her cape a la Batman to deflect all the bullets. Then she unleashes a fire attack so brutal it looks like Ace's fire pistol. Yes, the same one from One Piece. And leaves all the witches fried on the floor, with Honoka in her arms, once again in princess mode. She exits the scene like a secret MI6 agent. Mission accomplished. After finishing their mall trip and causing a minor fire, the 2 head back towards school. On the way, Honoka apologizes for getting involved in all this madness. He even suggests maybe it would be better if he were locked up or sealed somewhere, but Ayaka denies it. She says he doesn't need to worry about that she'll protect him forever. Then she warns, if he really wants to be her apprentice, he better get ready because it won't be easy. Honoka smiles, excited and determined to get stronger. Soon after, they arrive at school. Ayaka reveals that the school is actually one of the workshops and takes him straight to the principal's office to introduce him to her master, Kazane. Kazane, of course, scolds her daughter. She says she destroyed too much at the mall and wonders, what's the point of being a workshop witch if you go around breaking everything? But then she turns to Honoka and explains that it's tradition for witches to introduce their apprentices to the master on the first day. That's why she asked Ayaka to bring him. The next day, Ayaka takes Honoka for training. On the way, they're ambushed. Guess by who? Of course, Tanpopo and her Team Rocket plushie version squad. Kana even asks if attacking Ayaka is really a good idea since she's practically invincible. But Tanpopo says they'll use the fast flow formation, which basically means charging straight at her with everything they've got, with no plan at all. Ayaka then tells Honoka to pay attention, and the very next second, sends all the enemies flying, exactly like those scenes where Meowth goes blasting off at the end of the episode. Back at school, he goes to open his locker, and boom, he's buried under an avalanche of hate letters and death threats. Someone even placed a voodoo doll of him inside. Ayaka shrugs and says it was probably her fans doing, and advises, better not pay attention to that. Even with Ayaka saying no one else would hurt Honoka, he could still feel the hateful glares coming from every corner. After all, he now sat next to the most admired girl in school, got her help during tests, was her partner in sports activities, and on top of it all, walked home with the princess. After class, he was getting ready to practice magic, but Ayaka accompanied him to the bus stop and said she knew how exhausted he was. So, that day, they'd take a break. They got on the bus and followed the usual route, until Ayaka saw a magical fish floating outside the window. She looked at the destination sign and noticed the name of the next stop had been replaced by something very sinister. End of the line. Instantly, she stood up and looked back. And there was Cronoir, sitting in the back of the bus. The place was completely empty. Even the driver had vanished. The bus was now being driven by Cronoir's magic itself. Ayaka ordered Honoka to stay put and went to face the enemy, who stood up and introduced herself with a cold smile. Ayaka prepared to launch a fireball, but Cronoir used her magic and stopped her from moving, a kind of magical dictatorship spell. Cronoir attacks with a powerful spell, but as expected, Ayaka doesn't suffer a single scratch. Honoka, unaware of her true power, foolishly steps in front of her as if he could protect her. Cronoir watches the scene coldly, declaring that no strike against Ayaka can prevail, for she is unbreakable. With a sudden movement, Ayaka lunges with lethal precision, piercing Cronoir's stomach with a clean strike. Honoka, stunned, falls to his knees, feeling a sharp pain, but quickly realizes his body is unharmed. In contrast, Ayaka collapses, blood flowing from the exact spot where he was struck. In an icy tone, Cronoir reveals that a skill called damage transfer connects them. Any wound inflicted on Honoka is absorbed by Ayaka whenever they are close. She explains that this bond was born of an ancient pact. To become a witch of incomparable power, Ayaka accepted the mission of protecting Honoka, channeling the mystical energy that pulses within him. To save her now, he must release more of that energy, a powerful spiritual essence, like an inner guardian. Cronoir hands him a glowing crystal, instructing him to consume it to awaken his latent potential. Before Honoka can decide, Ayaka intervenes, refusing to let Cronoir manipulate their bond. With a firm gesture, she summons intense green flames, forcing the enemy to retreat. In an instant of transformation, Ayaka channels Honoka's energy, taking on a majestic form with powers evoking the ancestral strength of a dragon. Her presence is overwhelming, and she shatters Cronoir's barriers, striking her with deadly precision. However, Cronoir escapes, leaving them in a deserted part of the city. Honoka awakens first, and notices that Ayaka's wound is miraculously healed, but she does not wake up. Desperate, he carries her to the hospital, where a nurse assures him that she only needs rest. When he gets home, Honoka finds the magical crystal in his pocket, the same one Cronoir tried to make him consume. He hides it in a drawer, keeping it for a moment of need, while reflecting on Ayaka's pact. Were their lives already intertwined before they even met at school? The next day, Ayaka reserves the school gym to train Honoka. She gives him a wizard's cloak imbued with mystical properties and explains its functions. With the cloak, Honoka feels his body lighter, able to leap to impressive heights, nearly touching the ceiling of the gym. Ayaka, with a steady gaze, guides him, holding him carefully as he comes down. Then, she challenges him to lift her, and Honoka realizes that the cloak amplifies his strength, making her light as a feather. Ayaka demonstrates how to summon a magical broom stored in the cloak with a precise flick of the wrist. Honoka tries but fails, feeling the weight of his inexperience. When Ayaka's alarm goes off, signaling the end of training, students invade the gym. Honoka panics, fearing they'll see his robes, but no one seems to notice them. Ayaka explains that the cloak carries an enchantment that makes them practically invisible, diverting others' attention. They leave the gym, and Ayaka asks if he's afraid of heights. Without waiting for an answer, she grabs him and rises into the sky on her magical broom. As they fly, she explains that witches patrol the city this way, ensuring the safety of their territory. 5 powerful witches from the school are always vigilant, protecting the area from supernatural threats. During the flight, Honoka sees a child being bullied by a group of aggressors. He insists on intervening, but Ayaka stops him, explaining that witches' role is to fight magical forces, not interfere in human affairs, to preserve the secrecy of their existence. Dissatisfied, Honoka desperately summons his broom and dives toward the bullies. He barely avoids a fatal fall, colliding with them and knocking them down. They turn on him, but Ayaka arrives in time, unleashing a wave of magic that neutralizes them, protecting Honoka and dissipating the threat. Honoka questions Ayaka about the rule of not interfering in civilian affairs, and she explains that the aggressors were actually disguised witches, able to perceive his presence despite the enchanted cloak. The child being attacked was a friend of Kasumi, Honoka's younger sister, who studies at the same school. Since she is not a witch, she didn't witness the magic, remaining unaware of the supernatural confrontation. Meanwhile, in Rotenburg, Medusa, sealed under maximum security, breaks her mystical chains and escapes. Her first goal is to reunite with her former pupils, the Tanpopo rocket team. Before Medusa can reach them, Tanpopo and her allies gather in a restaurant, planning how to capture Honoka and defeat Ayaka. The task is daunting. Ayaka seems invincible, and Honoka is bound to her by a mysterious force that keeps them inseparable. Rin, one of the allies, proposes a subtler strategy. Avoid direct confrontations with Ayaka and wait for a moment when Honoka is isolated to capture him. The group agrees, but before they leave, Cranoir appears and offers her collaboration, promising to reveal secrets that could weaken Ayaka. The next morning, Honoka wakes up and goes downstairs to get ready for school. Kasumi, his sister, greets him warmly, helping fix his messy hair with a comb and dryer. While styling him, she asks about a phone call he received from a girl over the weekend. Honoka hesitates, reluctant to admit that Ayaka, the most admired girl at school, has a special connection with him. He makes up an excuse, saying it was just a classmate reminding him about school activities. Kasumi, suspicious, asks why he ran off after the call. Under pressure, Honoka improvises another explanation, but Kasumi stares at him, threatening to playfully use the dryer. She reveals that she knows about his involvement with Ayaka, since rumors circulate at school and many are hostile to him for being so close to the princess. Before Honoka can respond, their mother, Komachi, calls them for breakfast, interrupting the conversation. Kasumi warns she'll bring it up again at night. Meanwhile, Ayaka waits for Honoka at the bus stop, but is surprised by 3 witches from Tanpopo's group. After breakfast, Honoka remembers his meeting with Ayaka and rushes to the bus stop. On the way, he falls into a trap prepared by Tanpopo, who uses mystical soldiers in the form of rabbits to capture him. Immobilized, he hears Tanpopo reveal that her allies are fighting Ayaka, now vulnerable, since Cranoir shared the secret of her invincibility. Separating her from Honoka weakens her. Suddenly, 2 of Tanpopo's soldiers are thrown into the air by an overwhelming force. Tanpopo looks up and sees a giant teddy bear manipulating her soldiers. It's Kasumi, revealing herself as a powerful witch. Furious at the interruption, Tanpopo summons her own titan, a colossal rabbit, unleashing an epic showdown. Kasumi's bear dominates at first, but the rabbit counterattacks with precise blows. The battle intensifies, with both titans trading devastating attacks until a skeletal T-Rex emerges, controlled by Rin. Kasumi, undaunted, transforms her bear into a colossal creature, crushing the rabbit and the T-Rex with a single strike, leaving a trail of destruction. Kasumi descends from the bear and approaches Honoka, who watches in shock. He asks what's going on, and she firmly replies that she was always the one protecting him whenever Ayaka wasn't around. Worried, Honoka holds her hands and insists on saving Ayaka. But Kasumi points at her, calmly sitting on the bear's paw, absorbed in a book. Ayaka comes down, and Honoka runs to her, relieved at her safety, thanking her for facing the witches. Kasumi, annoyed, questions why he doesn't thank her, since she was the one who actually saved him. She confronts Ayaka, reminding her of their agreement. Kasumi would protect Honoka at home, on holidays and weekends, while Ayaka would care for him at school and on the way there. Ayaka, however, broke the pact by taking him out last weekend. As they argue, Honoka realizes Kasumi's earlier claims about being bullied at school were a ruse. She admits, with a sly look, that she was just testing him, as is her role as his sister. Kasumi warns Ayaka that the principal has reported the presence of more than 30 tower witches in the city, remaining strangely inactive, a sign that something huge and dangerous is about to happen. She urges them to stay vigilant. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Kazane turns on the TV and sees images of the devastation caused by the battle between Kasumi and Tanpopo. With a heavy sigh, she calculates the cost of repairing the damage, dreading the financial burden that will fall on her. In the city, Ayaka confides to Honoka that she wants to protect him full-time, suggesting they live together from now on. At the same time, Kazane schemes in secret, ordering her crocodile servant to capture all the tower witches in the city and take them to her base. Meanwhile, Kana receives an urgent call from Rautenberg, warning about Medusa's escape, a threat that could shift the balance of power. The next day, Ayaka visits Honoka's house to speak with his mother Komachi and Kasumi, asking permission for Honoka to live with her full-time. To everyone's surprise, Komachi agrees immediately and begins sharing a story from her youth. She reveals that in high school, she formed a deep friendship with a powerful girl known as Dragon Fang, none other than Kazane, Ayaka's mother. Their connection was so strong that they promised to unite their children in the future, sealing an engagement between Ayaka and Honoka before they were even born. Kasumi, indignant, protests, refusing to let her brother leave. Komachi firmly tells her she must accept that Honoka has to follow his own path. When Kasumi insists, Komachi scolds her with authority, gently pushes her aside, and instructs Honoka to pack his things and go. Ayaka and Honoka leave, and she asks if he's comfortable with the idea of living together. He replies that anyone would dream of such an opportunity, but confesses he feels a strange familiarity, as if they had already shared something in the past. Ayaka agrees, admitting her memories are also hazy, except for one certainty: her mission is to protect him with her life. She suspects a powerful force has manipulated their memories, as if everything were part of a greater plan. A luxury car arrives and the driver opens the door for them. Honoka, impressed, realizes Ayaka's wealth as the principal's daughter. They arrive at an imposing mansion, almost a palace. Upon entering, they are greeted by a team of maids, and Ayaka guides him to an elevator that takes them to the upper floors where her room is. Honoka wonders how anyone can live in such a grand place, with 41 floors. When they open the bedroom door, they find 3 maids petrified with Medusa lurking, her presence exuding menace. Ayaka orders Honoka to go to the 12th floor and closes the elevator door, facing Medusa alone. Transformed into her fire mage form, Ayaka fights fiercely, her green flames lighting up the room. On the other side of the door, Honoka hesitates. In the past, Ayaka always kept him close, but now she pushes him away. He deduces that Medusa is a formidable opponent, and that if he distances himself, Ayaka will lose her invincibility. Ignoring her orders, he decides to stay. At that moment, the elevator door melts and Ayaka falls exhausted, begging him to take her broom and flee. Before he can obey, Medusa casts a curse, turning Ayaka to stone. Desperate, Honoka begs Medusa to release her, promising to do anything. She refuses, cold and calculating. Honoka remembers the magic crystal he has carried in his pocket since they decided to live together. Without hesitation, he swallows it, releasing an ancient energy. An ethereal figure appears in the room, a white-haired woman introducing herself as Evermillion, the White Princess. Medusa attacks, but Evermillion repels her with a devastating strike, destroying part of the building and hurling Medusa outside. Meanwhile, Kazane, Ayaka's mother, watches from her office window, seeing her multi-million-dollar empire crumble into ruins. Upon seeing the destruction of her mansion, Kazane concludes that Medusa is responsible and summons her assistant to mobilize all the witches in the city in an unrelenting hunt for the serpent. Meanwhile, Evermillion confronts Honoka, explaining that Ayaka was petrified because he doubted her strength. To break the curse, Honoka must rekindle the trust and deep bond that unites them. In simple terms, he must show Ayaka a gesture of absolute faith, a kiss that symbolizes his unwavering belief in her. Before disappearing, Evermillion warns him to stay safe, avoiding summoning her presence too often. Medusa returns, bringing with her the Tanpopo rocket team, her loyal pupils. Without hesitation, Honoka kisses Ayaka, undoing the stone curse. During the battle that follows, he stays by her side, united by an unbreakable connection. Ayaka faces the Tanpopo team with a single devastating blow, launching them away, and engages in direct combat with Medusa. The two fight as equals, with Medusa trying to petrify Ayaka again, but she neutralizes the spell with a strength born of her determination and the bond she shares with Honoka. During the clash, Honoka, exhausted, faints in Ayaka's arms as she fights in the skies. That night, he wakes up in the school infirmary with Ayaka by his side. Confused, he asks if it was all a nightmare. She confirms it was real, pulling back the curtains to reveal Medusa and her pupils, now neutralized, resting in nearby beds. Honoka panics, But Ayaka reassures him, promising explanations later and ensuring there is no longer any threat. She closes the curtains, kisses Honoka softly, and says she's returning the gesture that saved her. They decide to return to Honoka's house since Kazane's mansion was destroyed. Meanwhile, Kasumi, after a fruitless night hunting Medusa at Kazane's command, returns exhausted. The next morning, Kasumi enters Honoka's room and finds him with Ayaka, who was examining the mystical seal on his body. Furious upon learning that Komachi allowed Ayaka to stay with them, Kasumi confronts Ayaka during breakfast, speaking harshly. Komachi, shaken, withdraws, sinking into silence. Honoka scolds Kasumi for hurting their mother, demanding that she apologize, but the damage is done. Komachi isolates herself in her room, refusing to speak. Honoka calls her workplace, reporting that she is sick and leaves for school before the others, carrying the weight of family tension. At school, the student council and Ayaka's fan club are in a tense meeting. The president, exasperated, complains that for weeks Honoka has been too close to Ayaka and no one has done anything. She pressures the vice president, who refuses to act, reminding her that Ayaka made it clear she will not tolerate threats against Honoka. Frustrated, the president turns to the advisor, science teacher Kiyoshiro, accusing him of incompetence and threatening his position if he doesn't solve the problem. Later, Kiyoshiro approaches Ayaka and Honoka, taking them to the science lab. As advisor to the student council, he confronts Honoka, explaining that his presence has caused trouble since his transfer in the second year. He reveals a school tradition. During the Autumn Cultural Festival, students elect a prince or princess based on appearance, grades, athleticism, and charisma. And Ayaka, as the principal's daughter and elected princess, is an untouchable symbol of the institution. Kiyoshiro explains that rumors about Ayaka and Honoka's relationship are shaking this order. He insists that regardless of the nature of their bond, Ayaka belongs to the school, not to Honoka, and asks him to step back. Honoka, shaken, reflects on the words, but Ayaka interrupts, asking him not to be discouraged. She clarifies that the tradition has roots in a legend about an angel who studied among humans, elevating the role of the princess. As the principal's daughter, Ayaka holds unquestionable authority above even the student council. She reveals she has a plan to resolve the situation, reassuring Kiyoshiro. Relieved, he changes the subject, saying he called them for a greater reason. With a magical tool, he transports them to a parallel dimension, where a new challenge awaits. Kiyoshiro tries to reassure Honoka, showing him a magical sphere similar to the crystal Chronoir offered him. He reveals it is an inferior replica, and that the original Honoka consumed must have left an impact when activated. Honoka, perplexed, asks how Kiyoshiro knows this, since he only shared the secret with Ayaka. Kiyoshiro explains they are in a parallel dimension because Honoka used the crystal to summon Evermillion, the white princess sealed inside him. He reveals there are 5 mystical seals in Honoka, and one has already been broken. The rupture threatens to trigger the collapse of the other seals, an irreversible process. The workshop headquarters entrusted Kiyoshiro because of Ayaka's exceptional strength, which allowed Honoka to live freely, but only while the seals remained intact. Now, the only solution would be for the principal to seal Honoka with her magic, but she is busy with Medusa and doesn't yet know what happened. Kiyoshiro insists he wants to help, offering Honoka the chance to abandon Ayaka and remain under his protection as his original guardian. Honoka rejects the offer without hesitation. At that moment, Ayaka pierces through the dimensional barrier with a precise movement, immobilizes Kiyoshiro on the ground, and rescues Honoka. Kiyoshiro, using an escape technique, survives and vanishes. Ayaka takes Honoka to the school's broadcast room and instructs him to summon all the students to the gym. Before the gathered crowd, Ayaka steps onto the stage, showing for the first time an interest in school leadership. With a firm and inspiring speech, she declares her commitment to the institution's future, dismisses the student council president, and appoints Honoka as the new president, personally choosing him. She assumes the role of vice president, demoting the former vice to a secondary role. Honoka, in his speech, acknowledges his classmates' distrust, but promises to earn their confidence through actions, determined to prove his worth. Kasumi, consumed by possessiveness toward her brother, plans to reclaim him. After school, she follows him to a toy store. When Honoka steps out for air, Kasumi captures him with her mystical bear and attacks Ayaka, neutralizing her with a sophisticated trap. Transforming the bear into an airborne vehicle, she destroys part of the house and declares they'll flee to the forest, where they'll live together, far from everyone. She reveals she overheard the conversation with Kiyoshiro and knows the principal and Ayaka will soon become Honoka's enemies. Before they can escape, a colossal shadow covers them. Kazane, mounted on a flaming dragon, appears in the skies with fire spells. She attacks while Kasumi dodges, causing destruction across the city. The confrontation culminates in a collision with a building, and they all fall. Ayaka, with quick reflexes, softens the impact, saving everyone and taking them home to rest. That night, Honoka wakes and apologizes to Ayaka for Kasumi's behavior. She, serene, says she admires Kasumi's dedication as a protective sister and asks with a touch of curiosity if she should try to be more like a sister to him. Honoka replies that if that were the case, she would be the older sister. They spend the night talking about family bonds until Ayaka falls asleep. Honoka lets her rest in her bed and notices with sadness that the toys he had bought for her and Kasumi were destroyed in the battle. The next morning, Kazani shows up, taking Komachi and Kasumi out shopping. Ayaka wakes up early and prepares breakfast for Honoka. He finds her in the kitchen, admiring her serenity, and they share the meal in silence, a moment of calm amidst the chaos. In the background, Tanpopo, her allies, and Medusa, who are staying at the house, conspire. They question Medusa about her submission to Ayaka. She explains that after losing the battle fairly, they must respect the rules and obey the victor as long as their goals are aligned. However, she suggests that, if they wish, they can try to capture Honoka when Ayaka is not around. Motivated, Tanpopo and her team climb the stairs, leaving Honoka's room and waiting for the perfect moment to act. To Honoka's surprise, Ayaka stays by his side the entire night, not needing to rest as much as a normal human, revealing yet another facet of her supernatural strength. In the living room, they talk about Kazane and Komachi, sharing reflections about their families. When the rain begins, they head to the laundry to dry their clothes. At that moment, Kazane, Komachi, and Kasumi return, and Ayaka goes to greet them. Honoka goes to the bathroom to dry off, but upon entering, he comes across Tanpopo and her allies, who accuse him of trespassing and capture him, dragging him into the main hall under reproachful gazes. Kazane, determined, puts Kasumi to rest and confronts Ayaka, demanding that they reveal Medusa's whereabouts. Both summon their brooms, ready for battle, but Ayaka turns against Kazane, declaring that she will not allow Medusa's capture. Kazane, frustrated, asks Honoka to convince Ayaka to abandon this stance. Reflecting on Kyoshiro's words, Honoka realizes that he has been hiding Medusa and her pupils from Kazane. Trusting Ayaka, he declares they cannot surrender. Ayaka, determined, calls Medusa, who appears and fulfills a pact previously sealed. She bites Ayaka, fusing their powers. Honoka momentarily faints and has a vision that clarifies the agreement. When Medusa attacked the mansion, Ayaka formed a contract with her, gaining power to face Kazane, while Medusa ensured a successor for her powers in the form of Ayaka, promising to protect her and her pupils until the right time. Kazane, unaware of the fusion, underestimates Medusa. Now part of Ayaka provokes Kazane, triggering an intense battle. Ayaka blocks a broom strike and tries to petrify Kazane with her eyes, but she grabs her by the collar and throws her down. Ayaka, persistent, manages to turn her into stone, but Kazane, with sheer determination, breaks the spell and counterattacks with a kick. She reveals that the fusion with Medusa severed Ayaka's connection with Evermillion, who rejects impurities, making her more vulnerable. Kazane threatens to defeat her, but Honoka, using his power, switches places with Ayaka, taking the blow himself. Later, Honoka awakens in a cell beside Ayaka, imprisoned in Kazane's punishment chamber. Ayaka tries to burn the bars without success, and explains that the fusion with Medusa was undone. Medusa is being interrogated, and the secret of Honoka's seals may be revealed. Ayaka says Kazane had warned her never to let the seals break, as they ensured Honoka's protection at school. With the seals broken, he is now a threat. The only solution is to defeat Kazane, who, being just, might ally with him if she were defeated. Honoka, skeptical after their previous loss, asks how that will be possible. Ayaka states the key lies in Honoka's latent power. Meanwhile, at school, Kazane plays chess with Cronoir, questioning her about Medusa. Cronoir reveals that witches from Rotenburg demanded custody of Medusa, forcing Kazane to hand her over. Frustrated, she reflects on the lost opportunity when an explosion shakes the building. Outside, Ayaka and Honoka emerge from the rubble of their prison. Kazane flies to them, scolding Ayaka for destroying yet another building and demanding they return home to help clean up the mess the next day. Ayaka, defiant, points her sword, declaring she will defeat her. Kazane, surprised, questions the need for the confrontation, but Ayaka remains firm. Realizing Kazane still doesn't know about the seals, they decide to retreat, relieved that the secret remains safe. That night, Honoka and Ayaka sleep in the same house in separate rooms, respecting the boundaries of their bond. During sleep, Honoka has a dream that reveals Ayaka's past memories. Kazane had hired two students, Kanai and Tuko, daughters of witches, to approach Ayaka and protect her. They became the first members of Ayaka's fan club. Later, Kanai took the position of vice president of the student council. Despite her difficulty in connecting with others, Ayaka stood out in charm, intelligence, and athletic skills as long as she was guided, consolidating her position as a central figure in the school. Over the year, Kanai and Tuko developed a deep admiration for Ayaka, captivated by her unique personality. This bond inspired the formation of Ayaka's fan club, which culminated in her nomination as the school's princess. One day, Ayaka crossed paths with Honoka, who was walking alongside Kasumi, and something inside her awakened. She sought out her mother, Kazane, and declared that she had found the person she was destined to protect with her life. Thus began her mission as Honoka's guardian. The next morning, Kasumi enters the kitchen and finds the dining table occupied by the Tanpopo rocket team. Kazan, interested only in Medusa, released them, and with nowhere else to go, they settled in Honoka's house. Kasumi, visibly irritated, goes to her brother's room to wake him and finds Ayaka, wearing a medical uniform, examining the mystical seals on his body, claiming concern for his condition. After breakfast, everyone heads to school, where Honoka's routine resumes, his locker filled with reproachful messages and requests for him to leave the student council, as well as his usual struggles in class. During lunch, Honoka and Ayaka are in the cafeteria when they hear glass breaking. They run to the scene and find students vandalizing the school, turning it into chaos, with teenagers defying rules and causing disorder. Ayaka explains that it looks like a rebellion. Tanpopo appears, accusing Honoka, as president of the student council, of being responsible for the turmoil. At that moment, Tuko is pushed to the ground by Rin, an intimidating girl who hands Honoka a letter demanding his presence in the gym at 2:30 p.m., alone. The tone suggests an inevitable confrontation. Toko reveals that, the night before, she saw the former student council president with Rin in a bar where she accused Honoka of taking her position by force and ruling the school like a despot. Ayaka instructs Toko to meet her after class. In PE class, Ayaka explains that Rin is one of the 5 witches responsible for protecting the school, known as the Bear Killer, for having defeated a fierce tiger with her bare hands. Suspended for 2 months for causing trouble, she now seems to be leading the revolt. During lunch, Honoka comments that he expects a reaction from the principal. But Tanpopo reveals she met Cronoir, who informed her that Kazane is out of town on business, leaving the school in the hands of someone who doesn't care. At 2:30 p.m., Honoka heads to the gym alone, following Ayaka's advice about Rin's fighting style. Upon entering, he finds the court transformed into a ring, surrounded by a crowd of students. Rin confronts him, accusing him of dishonoring her friend, the former president, and strikes him with a punch to the face, knocking him down. Honoka gets up, but Rin, determined to punish him publicly, attacks him mercilessly, turning him into the target of her blows. When she grabs him by the tie, about to land her final strike, Honoka, guided by Ayaka's advice, activates his power, gaining strength and agility. He pushes her to the ground, taking the advantage. However, he hesitates to strike her, driven by a sense of honor. The gym lights go out, and Ayaka appears with Tanpopo and her allies. Rin defeats Tanpopo's witches with ease, but Ayaka neutralizes her with a single precise blow. Ayaka and the others lift Honoka in a victorious pose, using their enchanted cloaks to conceal their intervention. When the lights come back on, the crowd believes Honoka defeated Rin. Later, Ayaka reveals she planned everything with the former president, who agreed to help make Honoka popular in exchange for returning to the student council. Although the former president exaggerated by inciting Rin, the plan was a success. Honoka is hailed as the hero who defeated the Bear Killer, gaining prominence on social media and approval from digital influencers, consolidating his position as president. Days later, Ayaka takes Honoka to the top of a towering building and announces she will begin training him to master his magic, preparing him for the challenges ahead. Honoka questions Ayaka about her change in attitude, remembering that she once opposed teaching him magic due to the dangers involved. Ayaka, with a serious look, reveals she knows he has been secretly training and hiding things from her, something that displeases her deeply. She summons a familiar of blazing flames and orders Honoka to use his magic to face it. The familiar unleashes a burst of fire, knocking Honoka down. Ayaka instructs him to summon his own familiar, but he, confused, doesn't know how. When the familiar attacks him again, he injures his elbow. Ayaka immediately halts the training. Honoka, determined, pushes her away, insisting he needs a strict mentor to learn. Ayaka, after a moment of hesitation, lifts him and with a sudden gesture, throws him off the top of the building, challenging him to summon a flying familiar or face the consequences. As he falls, Honoka is attacked by the fire familiar, with Ayaka following on her broom. Desperate, he reflects on what he values most. Moments before hitting the ground, he recalls a memory of Ayaka, in a moment of vulnerability, and a colossal avatar appears, an imposing figure of her in a medical uniform, which destroys the building ahead with a punch. The explosion reveals Kyoshiro and Cronoir, who were watching the scene. Cronoir, surprised, recognizes the powerful magic and deduces that Honoka has broken the second seal to summon it. She mentions that Kazane is absent, leaving her in charge, and complains about the monotony. Exhausted from the magical effort, Honoka faints, and Ayaka takes him home. Meanwhile, Kazane explores an ancient underground chamber and is confronted by Rin, who reveals that Toko informed her of her location. Rin delivers a message from a self-proclaimed Tower Witch messenger, a sorceress named Weekend, who has taken everyone in the city hostage. A week later, Ayaka and Honoka head to school for an exam, while Kazane meets with Weekend. Kazane confronts Weekend, mentioning the bomb and proposing to negotiate custody of Honoka. Weekend, coldly, clarifies that she desires Honoka's powers, but is not there to negotiate. She explains that Kazane's protective barrier, which prevents witches from harming civilians, consumes her mana with every incident. Normally, Kazane's mana reserve is inexhaustible, but Weekend plans to overload it. She detonates rune bombs spread throughout the city, reducing it to rubble. As predicted, the barrier protects the citizens, but completely drains Kazane's mana, leaving her unconscious. Weekend reveals she orchestrated Medusa's escape and manipulated Cronoir to remove Kazane from the picture. Her allies capture Kazane, imprisoning her in a cell where it will take days for her to recover. Meanwhile, at school, Ayaka senses the explosions and pulls Honoka into the witch's underground workshop. There they find Kasumi, who embraces her brother in relief. They are received by Tuko, Rin, Natsumi, leader of the school's protective witches, and Itori, a girl with feline traits. Before they can explain the situation, Natsumi uses a tranquilizer weapon, aiming at Honoka but hitting Ayaka, who faints. Kasumi tries to protect them, but Rin neutralizes her with a strike. Natsumi explains they need to seal Honoka until they locate Kazan and understand the enemy's intentions. Honoka, grasping the seriousness, accepts and is taken with Ayaka to an underground cell. In the cell, Honoka notices the high ceiling, open for ventilation. He tries to use his broom, but his magic is blocked. Ayaka awakens, lamenting her carelessness, and deduces that her mother's defeat caused the magical suppression. Itori appears at the ceiling, projecting a hologram of Weekend, who declares she has found Honoka, her new ward. Furious, Ayaka destroys the device, causing an explosion that opens a breach in the wall. She decides to escape and defeat Weekend, explaining that the city's destruction blocks magic. They climb a long staircase for 2 hours, emerging onto a mountain on the outskirts. Faced with the city in flames and ruins, Honoka despairs, blaming himself for the devastation. Crushed, he believes his mother and everyone at home died because of him, since the enemy was after him. Ayaka, calm, confronts him, saying he must take responsibility, but assures him no one has died. She explains that, according to an ancient tradition, when a witch's workshop is established, its leader forms a pact with the heart of the city, creating a barrier that protects all non-witches. When civilians are in danger, the contractor's magic is consumed to repair damage caused by magic. With the city in ruins and Kazane, the contractor, missing, no witch can use magic until a new pact is formed. Thus, their first goal is to reach the heart of the city, to make Honoka the new contractor, restoring the witch's magic. Meanwhile, Natsumi and the other witches assess the situation. The civilians have been evacuated and secured, but Kazane is in the enemy's hands. Without magic, the witches are vulnerable, and many have disappeared after the explosions. One of them, covered in time bombs, bursts into the workshop, revealing that Weekend has captured them and demands Honoka within 30 minutes, or they will all explode. Kasumi joins Tanpopo and her team, who are monitoring Weekend on the school grounds, surrounded by witches bound with bombs. Tanpopo asks Kasumi what to do, and she replies that, as the only witches capable of using magic, they must prove their worth to remain in the house. In the tunnel to the heart of the city, Ayaka and Honoka face Gibraltar, an ally of Weekend, who summons a stone golem to crush them. Gibraltar grabs Ayaka, but she counterattacks with a powerful kick, shattering the stone armor. Ayaka reveals that, in addition to her magic, she was trained in martial arts by Kazane, making her formidable even without powers. They advance, leaving Gibraltar defeated. In the underground workshop, Natsumi tries to disarm the bombs manually, but with only 18 minutes left, she decides to confront Weekend directly. Meanwhile, Cronoir awakens and discovers the city in ashes. Her ally explains that Weekend, responsible, manipulated information about Honoka. Enraged that Weekend defeated Kazane, Cronoir decides to face her. Natsumi and the others reach Weekend, who mocks them, saying that in less than 12 minutes everyone will die, and defeating her won't disarm the bombs. Kasumi suspects Weekend is only a distraction and rushes to find the real bomb controller. Honoka and Ayaka reach the heart of the city, where he follows her instructions to form the pact. With minutes left, he completes the contract, restoring the witch's magic. Natsumi, Rin, and the others feel the power return, disarm the bombs, and capture Weekend, imprisoning her in a magically sealed cell. However, Weekend uses physical grenades to destroy the seal, knocking everyone down with the explosion. Protected by hidden iron armor, she escapes, detonates the remaining bombs, injures several witches, and challenges Honoka to face her. Thanks to the pact, Honoka hears the voices and feels the pain of the victims, deciding to use his powers. Ayaka, however, stops him with a headbutt, declaring that she will face Weekend alone. Kasumi and Tanpopo find Weekend's ally and engage in battle, while Cronoir captures Gibraltar, forcing her to reveal the plan and Weekend's whereabouts. After the fight, Ayaka takes Honoka to the school infirmary, leaving him to rest. In a dream, Honoka accesses memories of his mother's past, but Kyoshiro pulls him into a special dimension, a realm where the city's memories converge, interrupting the vision before it reveals something crucial. As the city's new contractor, Honoka is taken by Kyoshiro to this dimension, where instead of dreaming, he accesses the realm of collective memories. In the elevator, Kyoshiro explains that, in times of crisis, non-witch civilians are evacuated to this plane, stored as stars in the sky. When the city is restored, their memories are edited to erase any trace of the incident, preserving the witch's secret. Honoka questions the erasure of memories, and Kyoshiro reveals that, as a member of the Mika family, his role is to manipulate the citizens' memories to keep the witch's existence hidden. Meanwhile, Kasumi faces Weekend's ally, who has the ability to copy magic. The battle turns into a titanic clash, with Kasumi's colossal pink bear against an identical black bear. They trade devastating blows, destroying part of the school building where Tanpopo and her team are. Kasumi uses her bear to save an ally, but this leaves an opening, and the enemy strikes her down. When victory seems lost, Medusa appears in her human form, petrifying the opponent with a glance. She scolds her pupils for failing to defeat such a weak adversary and flees with them, pursued by the witches of Rotenburg. In the school infirmary, Itori enters and asks Ayaka about Honoka. She explains that he has a high fever, the result of the effort to form the pact with the city. Itori reports that she completed her mission, stating that Cronnoir is hunting tower witches. She warns Ayaka not to worry about Honoka, but Ayaka, determined, thanks her and asks Itori to stay with him. Wielding her sword, Ayaka flies to the church where Weekend awaits her. She attacks immediately but is repelled by an explosion. Weekend reveals that, unlike Ayaka and Kazane, she has no extraordinary powers. Her strength lies in strategy, years spent preparing bombs scattered throughout the city, allowing her to fight them anywhere. The place is mined, and Ayaka is at a disadvantage. The church ceiling collapses on her, but Ayaka emerges with her flames, facing Weekend in close combat. Despite her skill, Ayaka is thrown against the door by an explosion, while Weekend summons gigantic monodolls to attack her. At school, Honoka and Kyoshiro are surprised by an ally of Weekend. Kyoshiro uses his magic to send Honoka back to the real world. He wakes in the infirmary, where Itori forces him to stay in bed due to his fever. She receives a call from Kyoshiro, who warns about a time bomb planted by Weekend in the realm of memories. If not disarmed, all the evacuees will die. Itori takes Honoka to Ayaka, arriving just in time to find her defeated on the ground. Honoka takes her in his arms, begging her to use her powers to stop Weekend and save everyone. Ayaka, with effort, overpowers Weekend, demanding the location of the detonator. Weekend, with a cold smile, reveals it's too late and activates the bomb. Facing imminent destruction, Honoka summons Evermillion, despite Ayaka's warnings. In the realm of memories, Evermillion confronts him, reminding him he went against her advice. He expresses his desire to restore the lives and the destroyed city. Evermillion agrees, but demands an equivalent price: Honoka's life. She warns him that, by the pact, his death would also kill Ayaka. After a moment of reflection, Honoka accepts, sealing the contract. The city is restored, the buildings rise again, and the citizens return as if nothing had happened. Honoka, embraced by Ayaka, apologizes for sacrificing their lives. Ayaka, refusing to accept it, invokes Evermillion and offers her own life in exchange. Her magical form dissipates, and she collapses unconscious, while Honoka survives. Before he can process the loss, Weekend, restored by the wish, stabs him in the back, taking advantage of the moment of vulnerability. With a look of disdain, she accuses Honoka of ruining her plans, revealing she has only one knife left. She taunts him, saying he can join Ayaka in death. With effort, Honoka pulls the knife from his body and knocks her down, pinning her to the floor. He drives the blade beside her head, declaring that he will no longer allow her to manipulate lives or condemn him to misery. He states that no matter how many times she tries, he will always thwart her schemes. Exhausted, he collapses on top of her from the wound. Impressed, Weekend decides to spare him and orders her ally to heal him, noting that she still has a few days before Kazane fully recovers. They flee to their hideout, but are intercepted by Cronnoir and her crocodile servant, who capture Weekend. In the infirmary, Honoka weeps over Ayaka's motionless body. Itori enters, receiving a call from Kyoshiro, who informs them the mission was successfully completed. Honoka, consumed by sorrow, recounts everything that happened. Kyoshiro, intrigued, points out an inconsistency. Only the contractor can fulfill the requirements of a pact, which means Ayaka could not have offered her life in Honoka's place. He notes that her body, though not breathing, remains warm, suggesting she is not dead. Kyoshiro proposes a ritual, a magic circle to restore the pact between them. Honoka cuts his palm, lets the blood drip onto Ayaka's chest, and, hesitant, kisses her forehead, unable to touch her lips. After a tense moment, she awakens, breathing again. In the realm of memories, Honoka confronts Evermillion, accompanied by Kyoshiro. She explains that, as children, Ayaka and Honoka sealed a pact. If he died or needed help, she would release her power, allowing him to keep her alive. When Honoka restored the city, Ayaka broke the contract, nullifying the need to share her power. Thus her sacrifice was invalidated, and Honoka survived by his own strength. Evermillion confirms that balance has been restored, but warns that new challenges will arise. Meanwhile, Cronoir faces Weekend in a devastating duel, defeating her with ease. Disappointed by her weakness, she considers interrogating her, but Kazane appears, demanding custody of Weekend. Surprised, Weekend questions how Kazane recovered in less than a day, when it should have taken a week. Kazane reveals her mana was restored in only 20 hours, but she chose not to intervene earlier to allow Ayaka and Honoka to handle the crisis, stepping in now to end the conflict. Cronoir and Kazan dispute the right to deal with Weekend, triggering an intense battle. Exchanging powerful blows, they demonstrate their incomparable strength, but Kazane prevails, solidifying her position as the most powerful. The next morning, Honoka wakes up in his room, greeted by Ayaka with a serene welcome. She encourages him to get ready for school, revealing that her magical powers will take time to recover, but that she is fine even without them. On the way, the Tanpopo rocket team tries to ambush Honoka, but Ayaka, even without magic, demonstrates her authority, immobilizing Tanpopo and her allies with impressive physical strength. Intimidated, they apologize and retreat. Order is restored, and the city resumes its routine as if the chaos had never occurred. Thus, the journey of Honoka and Ayaka, marked by sacrifices, pacts, and victories, comes to a pause, leaving the promise of new challenges on the horizon.